Welcome, everyone. Our session today is the light of wisdom, and it follows the conclusion of a topic and a chapter that we've spent a few sessions on, strength of emotion. And the gist of what we studied in the strength of emotion was, how do we use emotion positively? How do we use emotion so that it becomes a strength, something that complements, something that adds to the life that we're going through? Examine, do a self-assessment of how you feel when you're going through certain emotions. How do you feel when you're going through the emotion of envy? How do you feel when you're going through the emotion of vengeance? And look at it objectively. So with some emotions, even if they're negative, they seem to be motivating, propelling you into action. So there may be some positive sides to the emotion, but there can also be some disastrous sides of an emotion. One of the challenges that people in the medical field, particularly nurses, they experience something called emotional fatigue, where they are empathizing, they are reaching out to the people that they're taking care of. They're sharing their pain, they're sharing their difficulties, but it takes a toll. They feel tired. So which emotions make you feel tired? Which emotions burn you out? Which emotions elevate you? And look at your mind, or look at your personality as this garden that you want to cultivate. It needs to be taken care of. It can be customized. It can be made into whatever you want it to be, but it has to be conscious. So last week, we didn't have the session because I had COVID. And as is with most COVID cases, there were a couple of days of high fever. And during this time, couldn't do much reading, couldn't do much planning, work came to a standstill, and different emotions I was observing. So there's an emotion of impatience, as if it's ever convenient to be ill or to have COVID. It's never convenient. But then I thought of what emotion would be useful for the situation. And suppose instead of emotion like impatience, you have the emotion of grace, gratitude. And immediately there came a calm in my personality. And I'm not sure if it's psychological or a question of timing, but I think my temperature also dropped. The fever came down. Regardless, the idea is, what type of emotion do you want to have in your personality? And to cultivate those emotions takes effort, because it's a result of your thinking. It's a result of your gardening. So the emotions come naturally, depending on where you've elevated your personality to. So in my case, there were some emotions there that I could see need improvement. It was not my default setting to go towards grace, gratitude, but I'd like it to be there. I can work on that. So I was able to move the emotions. I was able to change the perspectives to get to those emotions, but how to make it your default setting. That's the work. That's the changing the quality of emotion from sensual to sublime, from restless to restful. But we've got to conceive it. So the next time you're going through an emotion, take a step back, look at it, and see if it's an emotion you want to invest in, or it's an emotion you'd rather see the back of. Today, we get into the thick of the philosophy. It's going to be deep. So this is a disclaimer. This is not an easy topic today. And from next week, we return to more practical discussions. But this is the nature of the book that we're studying. At this junction in the book, the author decides, the topic being the light of wisdom, to delve into exactly what the philosophy is about, the essence, the crux of it. So everything else is incidental. It is, by the way, they're bonus add-ons. But the crux of the subject is to find the light of wisdom, self-realization. And today we're going to discuss, what is this self-realization? What is the state of human perfection? So we'll cover the points, and the following week we'll discuss more about how to gain this wisdom. What is the best way to approach the subject to bring this light into our personality? So I'm going to start with a metaphor, which is in the book, and it describes a person in a dark room trying to navigate themselves through the room. So think about the metaphor. What are the points of comparison that you can see in the larger perspective of life? A person in a dark room trying to navigate themselves through the room. What are the points of comparison?
The darkness is our ignorance.
The darkness is our ignorance. Great. Yes. And because of the darkness, what are the other points?
You hit and try to find your way. Stumble
Yes.
while finding your way.
Yes, correct, Aksha. So because of the darkness, because of our ignorance, we try and find our way. We feel around the room. We hit many cornices and corners, edges, furniture. You're right. Because it's dark, we can't see. We're hitting all these different objects in the room. Right. What else?
Our other senses become more heightened. Smell,
Yes.
touch, all around us. We notice more than when we're seeing something.
Because of the lack of sight, the other senses are heightened. Yes.
We're also sort of paralyzed because we're worried about the darkness, the unknown is hitting something. So we're just paralyzed with just being scared and in one place.
That's it. We're paralyzed. We're anxious. We're not sure where we're going. Okay. So we've covered the one part of the example. One more point in this example is, in our ability to navigate ourselves, if we hit something, we move it. We hit a coffee table, you feel it, oh, okay, and I don't want to hit this again. You move it to the side, and you keep going. Now, you put the light on. What's the difference?
You have clarity. You see what's around you. You see what's dangerous, what's not.
Exactly. And bring it into the parallel of life. The ignorance is the darkness. And because of our ignorance, we are unnecessarily suffering. We say unnecessarily suffering because you always have this light switch with you. In fact, light you are. You just don't know it. And because you don't know it, it's as if we put the light switch off. And therefore, we're stumbling through life, getting hurt and disappointed, bruised and battered. And the maximum that we're doing, think about the example, the maximum that we're doing is trying to adjust or solve the immediate problem to just be out of our way, so we can keep on moving. That's it, maximum. The way to solve these problems of life is, instead of continuing to stumble, trip, put the light on. As soon as you have the light of wisdom, the bigger light, your relationship with all the objects in the room becomes clear. You know where you are. You know where you'd like to go. You know where all the other aspects in the room are. Similarly, when you discover and realize your true self, who you are, you will know exactly how to relate to wealth, family, reputation, status, every aspect of the world. You know how to relate to perfectly. What to be careful of, what to court. Life becomes clear. But we need this light of wisdom. And this is the theme of the topic today. What exactly is this light of wisdom? How do you switch it on? So we're going to start with one of the definitions of this light of wisdom. In Sanskrit, self-realization, or the self, God, the kingdom of heaven, is described as Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat means absolute existence. Chit means knowledge, absolute knowledge. And Ananda means Anar. What does Ananda mean? I'm asking Anar because I met him there.
Bliss.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you for saving me, because I forgot what it meant.
He just experienced it. He doesn't remember what it is. We met at this beautiful spa. I was giving lectures, just in case any of you are mistaken that I was sunbathing or having treatments. I just thought I should clarify. That was Anna's role there. Mine was giving lectures. And the place was called Ananda, bliss. And it truly is a beautiful place. But only the self alone is absolute bliss. So we're going to go one by one. What do we mean by absolute existence? All experiences and states of consciousness that we go through are temporary. They don't last forever. In fact, and we don't even realize it, we are constantly wearing and changing personalities and identities. So right now you're Leila. But when you go to sleep, you may change your personality and dream you're someone else, or perhaps Leila, but maybe a few years younger, a few years older. Leila is a small girl, or in the dream, Leila could be Sheila. Leila in the waking state, Sheila in the dream state. Different personality. And when you go through a period of no dreams, that is called deep sleep. So throughout this existence, we're constantly rotating these different characters. Waker, right now, hopefully. I can't see some of your cameras on, so I'm not sure if you're in the waking state or you've left us to go to the dream and deep sleep. And when you go to sleep, you could go to dream, deep sleep. These are the different states of consciousness. What the philosophy says, these are impermanent. And this, yes, we can verify. Yes, of course, I'm not always awake. I go to sleep. Sometimes I have dreams. Sometimes I don't have dreams. So yes, there are these different states of consciousness: waking, dream, deep sleep, dream, waking. They don't last. So they're not absolute. They're not permanent. They're not always there. Yes, we can agree with this. Is there something that is always there? And this is where the philosophy says, yes, that something, that entity or being that's in your deep sleep, in your dream, and your waking, that is yourself, the self within. So have a look at this diagram just to refresh. What do we mean by the self? Every human being is made up of, anyone? This is refresher, it's not new.
Body, mind, and intellect.
Body, mind, and intellect on one side. This is the material component of our personality. The other side, which we're focusing on today, is the spirit side, the spiritual self component. Now, the body, mind, and intellect, they are there in our waking state. Yes, clear. But when we go to sleep, your body that you see now is not there in your dream. In fact, your dream is just thoughts sparking off, different types of thoughts, usually connected to what you experienced during your day in the waking state. You thought about a friend, you thought about a meal, you watched a program set in Mexico, and then suddenly you're having a dream about having dinner with your friend in Mexico. All this mix. So your mind and intellect, they are available in your dream. In deep sleep, all of them are not there. They've gone to sleep. They've gone into the seed form. They've gone quiet. But what's left? What's still there? The self, the spirit. The self, the spirit is there in your deep sleep, is there in your dream, and is there in your waking state. But it also exists as a fourth state by itself. So have a look on the screen. And that's why it's called the fourth state. Turiya. Turiya means fourth. So we know this. So think about it. So, when we see words like consciousness, we get a little bit intimidated. Not so. It's just a state of experience. That's all it means. So what are the types of experiences we go through? Deep sleep means no dreams. Then dreams, yes, we understand dreams. We understand waking. But this fourth state, we don't understand. This is new. And this is the state of the self by itself, without the body, mind, intellect. And this is the state that is said to be the ultimate. I want to give you an example to explain why it's called the absolute existence. Now, again, this is in the book. And after we discuss this section, it comes up only much later, again, in the book. So there are various references to it, but it is explained in detail in section C of the book, the latter part. And it says this: when you are in the dream, do you go through emotions in the dream? Anyone? Do you experience emotions? Do you experience stress in the dream?
Yes.
Yeah. Challenges, problems? All the problems of the dream that you go through, there's a solution to it. Not Vedanta. All the problems in the dream, what's the solution to it? All of it can be taken care of. Not with an aspirin,
Wake up.
Wake up. Wake up.
That's it.
Wake up.
You wake up. As soon as you wake up, every single problem in the dream is dissolved. The dream partner also dissolves. The dream bankruptcy, financial threat dissolves. All the problems of the dream dissolve the moment you wake up. So everything that we're going through in the dream, what is the cause of it? Why are we suffering in the dream? You could be a millionaire in your waking state and dream that you are a pauper, in trouble, with illness in your dream. All that suffering that you're going through in the dream, it's real for you as the dreamer. But what is the cause of all of that? All of that imaginary, unnecessary suffering. And we're relating back to this dark room metaphor that we started with. What is the cause of all that suffering in the dream? Sorry?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. So what is the cause of that anxiety?
You're not aware of the waking state.
You're not aware of your waking state. If you were aware in your dream, hey, why am I suffering? I'm a millionaire. All the troubles would go. So it's your ignorance of your waking state that create the anxiety in the dream, that create all the problems in the dream. So what do you need to do to solve all the issues that you're going through in the dream? Wake up. Get knowledge of the waking state. Is everyone okay with this example? Is it clear?
Yes.
Right? You're dreaming that you're a pauper. As soon as you learn that actually you're a waker and you wake up, you're freed. All those problems disappear. Now, if we understand this example, Leila, we okay? We got this? The example, dream, waker. Now, bring that example and correlate it to the problems and issues we are facing in the waking state. What Vedanta says is all the problems, anxiety, and issues, and tensions, and stress, they are nothing but your imagination. They are illusory. They have no pith, no substance. They are unreal, just as you experienced in the dream. But we feel them. We are affected by them, and we are anxious. We experience anxiety. Why? Daniela, why?
Well,
Why are we going through all this?
because of the ignorance of the self that
That?
that we don't have enough knowledge we don't know ourselves so well, that we perceive ourselves as the body, as all the emotions and all the thoughts, and we don't know how to wake up.
Yeah, that's it. Because we're ignorant of the self. We're ignorant of the fourth state. And just as we got freed from all the problems of the dream by waking up to the waking state, all the problems that we're going through now in the waking state, how do we get freed from them? Wake up to self-realization. We are suffering now unnecessarily because of ignorance of our real identity. All we need is knowledge of our real identity. We don't have to find it. It's there. We have to uncover, unravel it. In fact, the title for the topic is called Veil of Ignorance. So it's the first topic in this chapter. And this is exactly it. It's as if somebody, actually, there's nobody else to blame. It's self-imposed. You've put a veil over your light. And what are all the methods and efforts that we are trying to do? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to produce light? In South Africa, they have power issues. So electricity is a sensitive topic. Are we trying to create light? What are we doing, Vasu? We're trying to remove the veil. Thin the veil first, as if, thinning the veil, let it become less heavy, less dense, thin the veil. So you start almost seeing the light, as it were. Now this, again, I'm being metaphorical here. Seeing the light means not suddenly you start seeing auras and stars and wow. None of that really. It means that you see the self in and through everything. You start seeing the truth of life. Why? Because you're thinning the veil. So this is absolute existence. You find self-realization, all the issues of the waking state, dream, and deep sleep fall back. It's also described as absolute bliss. What is another word for bliss? Anyone?
Ananda.
Joy, ecstasy.
Yeah, that's a Sanskrit word. Another English word, a synonym.
Joy,
Joy. Mhm.
Total happiness.
Total happiness. Mhm. Total happiness, pleasure. So to understand total happiness, let's try and get regular, normal human happiness first. How or when do we experience pleasure? Joy. Don't say only on Sunday Vedanta class. I know that you are exaggerating. When do you experience joy, pleasure?
When you are at peace, your mind is not agitated. So you're able to sort of see the pleasure in everything.
And when do you experience that? When do you get that peace?
When your mind is not agitated, you're not worried about anything.
When? When does it happen?
When you're satisfied.
Satisfied, yes. Well, it's when you get what you desire. We experience pleasure, we experience joy, we experience this little bit of temporary, fleeting pleasures when we get what we want. Think about it. That's when we experience it. So when a desire is quietened, you experience pleasure. But it's not the total happiness that Peter mentioned. It's not permanent happiness. It's not absolute happiness. Why? Because any of those desires, when they're fulfilled like that, you get itchy. You experience the joy, but then the joy doesn't last. You say, what now? I want more. I want something else. So it doesn't fulfill you completely. In fact, if you think about it, not just philosophically, in reality, all you're doing when you're experiencing these joys or these pleasures, you're actually not experiencing positive bliss, positive pleasure. What we're doing is we are creating a desire. And what is that? When you create a desire, what is that? It is actually an
Seeking happiness.
agitation. It is an unfulfilled desire is the definition of agitation. So you're creating these agitations. Every time you pitch up a desire, there's an agitation to go and fulfill it. So we're creating these agitations. If the desire is stronger, the agitation gets more intense. Okay? And then you fulfill that desire and you bring that agitation back to zero. Do you see what we've done? We've gone in a circle. You created the agitation, 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 and then you go and fulfill it, comes back to zero. Why? This is human life. Just chasing your own tail, a mad goose chase. You're creating a bill, and then you're going and putting so much effort out there just to pay the bill. What Vedanta says, why are you creating the bill in the first place? Why do you need to create agitation to be peaceful? So all the pleasure that we are seeking or that we've experienced so far, all it is actually negative. It is this disparity between agitation and less agitation. Does everyone see that? So you've built up the agitation, and when you fulfill it, it comes down. But you never experience complete lack of all agitation except in deep sleep, when you go to sleep. Because we have so many unfulfilled desires. Does everyone follow? This relative displacement of agitation is what we are calling pleasure. Now, the bliss of self-realization is when you have no desires left. It's not just no agitation. What they say is that is the only time you experience positive bliss, positive happiness. It's not just a difference in degree, like every other pleasure. The pleasure you get from your child doing well versus the pleasure you get from eating a chocolate. Those are relative pleasures. They're different in degree, but the bliss of the self, the bliss of self-realization is true positive bliss. It is infinite. It doesn't come up and down, nor does it leave you hungry or wanting. It is absolute ananda, bliss. We don't talk about any other sensual pleasure. We don't call it blissful. Bliss we can only give truly to the self. Everything else is temporary, fleeting. So therefore, it's absolute bliss. Similarly, this self-realization is absolute knowledge. And again, we'll use the dream and the waking analogy. In the dream, you can have different subjects. You can have dream geography, dream history, dream nuclear physics, right? And in the dream, you've got all these different branches of knowledges, correct? It's possible? Yeah. So you have knowledge of surgery, you have knowledge of neurology, etc. You've got all these different knowledges in the dream. So it's a question of less or more. So what do we call physics in the dream? It's a great subject, great knowledge. It is perhaps higher than basic elementary physics that we study in primary school. So the difference in degree. Can anyone think of a knowledge that is different in kind in the dream? Or with respect to the dream? You can even have Vedanta in the dream. What kind of knowledge is different in kind? The kind of knowledge that is different in kind would be knowledge of your waking state. When you get knowledge of your waking state, all the other knowledges disappear. It is absolute knowledge. Similarly here, all the other knowledges, these are infinite. You can keep on adding one on one on one on one. It's all relative. On one side, it's ignorance. It all depends on where you are. Have a look at this diagram. It's got the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay. Some people, when they see graphs, they get panic attacks. Simple graph. All right. So you've got the y-axis, which is the vertical plane, and you've got the x-axis, which is the horizontal plane. And you're just counting. So where the lines intersect, that's your 0 point. And as you move along the horizontal axes, you go +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, +6, +7, etc. And as you go to the left of the 0, it goes -2, -3, -4, -5. So question to the group. Is the number 4, is it positive or negative?
Positive, I guess.
Positive or negative? Anyone else?
Positive.
Positive. Actually, it depends. It depends from whose standpoint are you looking at. So from the standpoint of 3, 4 is negative, is positive. But from the standpoint of 5, 4 is negative. It's minus. All knowledge is like this. From one standpoint, it looks like knowledge, but from a higher standpoint, that same knowledge becomes ignorance. You see that? So even if I was, again, if I was to ask you, what is -2, positive or negative? The first or the impulse is to say negative. It's got -2. No, -2 is positive with respect to -3. You see that? It's all relative. Similarly, all knowledge in this waking state is relative. The knowledge of the self is absolute knowledge. It's different in kind. And that's why there's this pun on the word Vedanta. Veda means knowledge. Anta means end. It's considered the end of knowledge because it's not a knowledge like physics or maths or chemistry. It is the knowledge that is the end. It's the culmination. It's the ultimate. You get knowledge of the waking state, all your problems disappear. The purpose of all experience, the purpose of all knowledge is achieved. This is what we're talking about, self-realization. Now we're going to move into another way of looking at this self or self-realization. So I'm just giving you different perspectives. So how do we seek or find the self? What the subject says is that this self is everywhere, all pervading. Just as in the dream, where has your dream come from? Anyone? What produced your dream? Kavita, I warned you. I told you it was going to be very heavy.
If I remember, Sudhakar, you had said it comes from vasanas.
It comes from vasanas, yes.
Yeah.
That's true. That is the technical answer.
The innate tendencies and maybe memories of unfulfilled desires.
Yeah. Let's take it from a waker's perspective. We can say loosely that our mind has produced the dream. Even sometimes when we have daydreams, our mind has produced it. We can say this. Now, in that production or that universe that you created, that temporary dream or daydream that you've had, which part is in every aspect of that dream universe? Your mind. Your mind is in the dream rabbit. Your mind is in the dream partner. Your mind is in the dream history. Your mind is in the dream star. Your mind is in the dream planets. Your mind is in the dream solar system. Your mind created all of that. It pervades all of it. Correct? It's all pervading with respect to that. Now, the question is, just as your mind is all pervading in the dream, so is the self all pervading in this universe that you're experiencing. So how do we find it? And this is where the scientists and the philosophers, or at least the Vedanta philosophers, differ. You've got the scientists at CERN trying to find consciousness, trying to find the truth, the reality, self in the tiniest subatomic particles. They're looking for that one thing that is in everything. They're looking for that particle. And they find something and they're so excited. But then they realize there's more to be discovered. There's a whole universe in that subatomic particle. Incredible. The subjective scientists, the Vedanta philosophers say, the way to locate the truth is to find it within yourself. So yes, it's all pervading. You can go and look for it outside. You can go and look for it in a beautiful location. You can go and try and find it in Jupiter. You can go to the outermost extremities of the universe looking for this self, because it is everywhere. But the way to approach the self is to find it within. Once you find it within, you're able to see it everywhere. And it's something like, if you wanted to approach a government of a country, the government is all pervading, as it were, in a country. The rules apply to the entire boundary of that country. But if you want to contact the government, where would you go? Where would you go if you want to contact the government?
To the capital.
To the capital. That's it. So yes, the government's all pervading, but you don't go into the bush. You don't go into the mountains to contact the government. You go to the capital, the headquarters. Similarly, the capital or the headquarters is within. It's in you. Again, what does that mean? When you say within, in you, you know the body, okay? But that's still external, it's outside. We know the mind and the intellect, okay? We're going deeper within. Paresh mentioned vasanas. What's further within? How do we examine that? How do we X-ray, keep on penetrating? And one of the ways that has been given is the most philosophical question. Who am I? Try to find the answer to that question. Keep on inquiring. And the answer is self-realization. But that unraveling or that trying to find the I is the challenge. At the moment, as Daniela mentioned, we wrongly think the I is the body. What do you mean the I is the body? Is it your hair? Then there's definitely less I as you get older. Is it your weight? Oh, there was more I last year, there's less I this year. Or you say, no, I'm also becoming the real I. I'm expanding, becoming more pervasive. This is not the I is not the body. It can't be the body. You know why? Because the moment you say this body is me, every second the body is changing. In fact, they say after every 7 years, every single cell in the body is replaced. So which cell is common or is the I? Can you hold a cell and say, this is you? Interesting thought. So what then makes you, you? What makes Debbie, Debbie? What is the lasting, permanent part? And in the section, it gives us different ways of analyzing it. It's saying, hey, at one stage you were a small girl, difficult to believe right now. And especially some people, it's almost as if they're born as very old people. But yes, at some stage they were small, mini versions of themselves. They were a boy or they were a girl, yes. And you say, I'm a boy, I'm a girl. And as you get older, I'm a teenager. Then you say, I'm a man, I'm a woman. It's become more options have become available of late. You define yourself as different genders or not as a gender at all. You're defining yourselves by these different stages. But what is the part that has gone through all these stages, these different phases of life? What aspect was there when you were a boy? Was there when you were a teenager, when you were a young man or old man? What was the part that was common throughout? Okay, we've got this part. Let's keep this aside. Then we say, I taste ice cream. I enjoy it. I perceive. I hear things. I can hear your voice now, Sudhakar. I hear. Okay. But you also use that I to say, I feel happiness. I feel loneliness. So you also use it to claim your mind. You identify with feelings. And then again, you say, I understand what you're saying. I'm getting a clearer idea of the self-realization. It was new. I was a bit suspicious in the beginning, Sudhakar, but it's becoming more convincing as we talk about it. It's becoming clearer. You identify with the intellect. So wait, hold on. Is the I the body? Or is it the mind that feels? Or is it the intellect that conceives? Which part is it? Seems to be none of them and all of them. Okay, so let's park that as well. And then the one that we've covered is when you're awake now, you say, I am Leila. And when you're in the dream, you say, I am Sheila. Oh, you've forgotten. I am Sheila in the dream. And when you're in deep sleep, you don't say much. You say, I am nothing. So at one stage, the I is identifying with Leela, then Sheila, then nothing. But Sheila is not Leela. The simplest way is try and do a transaction. Try and transfer some money from the waking to the dream. There's no connection between the two. They're two different personalities. So is the I waker? Or is the I the dreamer? Or is the I the deep sleeper? No, no. They're all three distinct personalities. Yet you use the I for all of them. So who does the I belong to? Well, let me ask this way. If the I is not Leela, then who is Leela? I cannot be Leela because Leela is not Sheila. Then who is Leela?
Can we the individual?
Which individual?
Figment of our imagination.
Figment of the imagination. No, Leela now. Leela. Who is Leela?
The waker.
The waker. Leela is the waker. Why are you wrongly identifying the I as the waker? The I is everything. Leela is the waker. So what we are doing is we are unnecessarily placing our identity, this I-ness, on Leela, or on the small boy, or on the old man, or on the body, or on the mind, on the intellect. So we're placing our identity of I wrongly. It's not true. It's incorrect. We're wrongly placing our identification maybe on a particular role. I'm a mother. Hey, what were you before you had children? That I was something else. You've made that I all about that particular limited role. It does not reduce or limit the real I. You may have constrained it with your ignorance. You may have incorrectly identified the I with a particular role. And so the I seems as if it's constrained and limited, but the I remains ever free. The real I. The self is not affected. The self is always the same. Permanent, blissful. But we've got to free that identity. We've got to move it off the body, move it off the mind, move it off the intellect, take it from the waker, dreamer, deep sleeper, all these incorrect places we've been identifying with it, and place it on its real identity, your real self, the self. So just because you say the self is I does not mean that we've understood it. The discovery of it and figuring out the real I is this journey or the spiritual journey. We have hypnotized ourselves. When I say hypnotized is because your real self is the self. We've hypnotized ourselves to believe we are particular roles. You remember the days of visiting cards? It's not so popular at the moment. What would people put on their visiting cards usually?
Name and profession, maybe.
Name, profession, anything else?
Contacts.
Yeah. No, I'm talking just that first, usually the first thing that they put. Yes, the contact details are there.
The name.
You put the name, yes. You put the name
Profession.
and put the educational qualifications?
Your association, your company association, or whatever you associate yourself with.
Company? Yeah, you put your company association.
Your title, your designation of your level in the company, whether you're top or middle, vice president, president, that kind of thing.
Exactly. These were the ways that we used to identify ourselves with. With what? Our degrees. MD, PhD, MA, BA, all sorts of letters. You know, for some person, he had to go on to 2 lines. They had done so many degrees. And then you don't know if they actually mean anything. FCPP, CH. Okay, I get it. You spend a lot of time studying. Great. That's how they choose to identify themselves. Or with a title, like you're saying, like Dr., Mr., Mrs. You identify yourself with your marital status. You identify yourself with your profession, your designation, CEO, COO. The only part of it is true is the O, 0. Our real identity is not known, and we have chosen random, arbitrary, herd instinct ways of describing and acknowledging our identity. Our outer form. Our self-worth has become constrained to how we look. That's more than that. It's infinite. It's great. We don't know the treasure of the real self. And that's why we're picking up trashy ways. Trash means no value. Limited ways of identifying of who we are. Only a human being can conceive of the self of the reality. An animal cannot do this. An animal, objects, of course, plants cannot do it. Only a human being. So a human being is marked by the ability to conceive the reality and pursue it. So should this not be then the mark of human development, civilization, progress? When we say a country is advanced, a country is developed, we look at all sorts of measures to describe it. GDP, that's usually financial. Why don't we look at the hallmark of being human? What is the level of self-development, self-unfoldment in that nation? Now, there have been certain countries which possess this kind of enlightenment. We've seen so many great artists, poets, philosophers come from these cultures. Unfortunately, they've been lost. India was one such country. And it's not that they didn't have progress in other spheres, material progress, trade, knowledge, but it was marked by self-development. So in fact, India had a culture where the theme of society was about self-realization. So every aspect from birth to death was towards this evolution. And everything you did and everything that the way you governed was to move the populace towards that. So from the roles, from the profession, from your vocation, everything was towards evolution. Now, when we think about this, immediately our mind goes towards, but were they rich? Were they materially well off? Were they comfortable? They had all of that, but it was incidental. Because once you have figured out your purpose in life, once you know your ultimate destination, everything else becomes clear gets added onto you. But if you're confused, in ignorance, don't know where you're going, why you're doing what you're doing, you may or may not achieve material prosperity or not, but there's no fulfillment. There's that something missing. So we go about in that dark room, hitting cornices and corners, getting disappointed, heartbroken here and there, stressed, anxious, sometimes some pleasures, but always fleeting and always leaving us wanting more. Seek the self. Seek the truth. And perhaps, if a few of us think like this, maybe society can self-correct and start marking its progress by the level of self-development, self-unfoldment. But it starts with you. You raise yourself by yourself. Quote from the Bhagavad Gita. See it on the screen. You raise yourself by yourself. And a quote from this chapter: modern civilized ones without self-development are but intelligent savages living in spiritual slums. Highly refined, highly intelligent. What are you using the intelligence for? Betray the country, personally aggrandize to the detriment of others. Modern civilized ones without self-development are but intelligent savages living in spiritual slums. So the need of the hour is to gain the light of wisdom. Next week, we spend more time figuring out how to gain the wisdom. Okay. Okay, everyone. Wish you a good week.
Thank you,
Good night.
Sudhakar. Hari Om.
Thank you, Sudhakar. Hari Om.
Thank you,
Sudhakar.
Hari Om,
Sudhakar-ji.
Sudhakar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.